let's talk about elderberries from start to finish. So elderberries obviously are a tremendously valuable medicinal plant. They also have value as a food plant too. But before we can use them for either of those, we have to identify them. So let's identify elderberries. Elderberries have pinnately compound leaves. So pinnate means feather-like. So it's a feather-like compound leaf. The edges of the leaves are a little toothy, little fine toothy. The blooms are small, white, and they grow in a big umbel or a big umbrella shape. And they form berries, which are a little smaller than pokeberries. They're a little smaller than pencil erasers. And the green berries are not the ones you want. You want them to be fully ripe, so they will be black or a deep, deep purple. The stems also have visible, noticeable lenticels. Now, a lenticel is a corky, soft piece of wood that allows gases to be exchanged from the inside of the stem to the outside, so it helps the plant breathe. Lenticels are very common in the woody plants. Maybe all of the woody plants have, might have to review that, but they're not always obvious. And on elderberries they are, so they're a good identifying feature. You'll also find noticeable lenticels on beautyberry, on the younger stems and bark of cherry trees, things like that. Where should you look for elderberries? Well, they're really fond of wet areas. They're not limited to swampy areas or ditches or places where water has some runoff, although it wouldn't hurt to give a glance over there around the edges of streams, places like that. I have them growing in my yard in areas that are not particularly wet, and they do just fine. So if you get them established somewhere, you don't have to have a stream running through your yard, and you can grow your own elderberries. In fact, they are very hardy plants, and they're very prolific, and they love to spread, and they love to make berries. So you may want to make friends with them and invite some of them to live near you. How do you invite an elderberry plant to live near you? Well, you could mess with the seeds, but honestly, it's so much easier just to take a cutting. You can take a cutting just about year-round, and almost invariably it will root and it will produce a new plant for you. Now, if you just cut a stem and jab it into the ground in the middle of summer when it's dry and hot, yeah, it probably won't live, maybe, if it's in a good spot. But if you take the dormant cuttings in winter and jab them in the ground, yeah, they're probably going to come back in the spring when it's all wet and cool. They're going to have enough energy stored in there that they're going to grow little roots. They love growing little roots. But if you want a surefire method, clip the stem. What you want is you want two sets of the little places where the leaves come out, those little leaf bud areas. And the official word escapes me right now, but it's bugging me. But those little bumps right there. Two sets, and the lower one will tend to want to make roots and the upper one will make leaves. This is not strictly where the plant has to make leaves. Now, in reality, the plant doesn't have to make roots right at those little bumps. They can make them from the lenticels, they can make them from the area that you cut. They love making roots, but it's just a good rule of thumb to include at least two sets. And stick them in some water, keep them wet, they will make roots and they will grow. Looky here. When you plant them out in your yard or field or wherever, if it's in a really dry spot, they might like a little shade to help keep moisture underneath them. Or if you mulch around them pretty heavily for the first few years while they get their roots under them, that might help them get established too. Let's harvest some elderberries. Don't spend your time picking off individual berries. Just clip the entire group and put it in a bag and bring it back home. Try to harvest clusters of berries that are almost all ripe. If you have a few green ones on there, it's not going to hurt anything. Don't worry, we'll take care of that. But, it's just a waste to harvest it if only half of them are ripe. Now, you will hear different methods of how to get the berries off of the stem, but I'm going to tell you right now, I have the very best one. That's right here, best in the world method, short of putting them in some very expensive machine. This is the easiest, method for everyone that has access to a freezer. Here it is. You'll hear people say that you should freeze the berries and then you can pull the cluster out and use a fork and pop them off. And, that works kind of well. Nah, this is the best method. Freeze a bag full of berries and then leave them in the bag and kind of twist it so that you've closed the top up and then just bang them on the floor. All the berries will fall right off. Then you can clip a hole in the bottom corner of the bag and pour the berries out right into a bowl. You will get some stem pieces. Don't worry. Yes, the stems do have some of the cyanogenic compounds or cyanide-forming compounds. It's okay, because we are going to cook these and you might be drying them. Either of those will inactivate the cyanogenic compounds so that they're safe. If you are particularly sensitive to them, too many elderberries can give you a stomachache, but they're not dangerous. Even if you were a child that was particularly sensitive to these cyanogenic compounds and you ate a bunch of fresh, ripe elderberries, you're probably looking at just bad stomachache, maybe some diarrhea, perhaps vomiting, which I grant you is no fun, but it's not in the dangerous area. So we kind of overhype the danger on this plant, and I'm not going to say that there's not some special specific circumstance where it could cause death. So, don't come back and try to blame me. I'm just saying, in general, we've overhyped the danger. You can eat the berries, especially if you dry them and or cook them. I will pull out any big pieces of stem, or if I notice any green berries, I'll pull them out, but I do not fret about it. It's okay if there are a few little pieces in there, not a big deal. Elderberries have a number of notable medicinal properties, which you can see right now. Most famously, they're useful for colds and especially flu by shortening the flu duration. They also boost the immune system, so regardless of what you're sick with, it's probably going to help. Now, if you are particularly sensitive to those cyanogenic compounds, or if you're working with a child, especially a young child, and you don't want them to get a tummy ache, you don't want to risk it, you can use the elder flowers. The flowers work really, really well too, but they are much gentler on the body. And remember, I think that elderberries are actually pretty safe, but the flowers are super duper safe. You can also use the leaves, although I never use those with kids. For one thing, they don't taste good. they taste kind of unfavorable, and kids don't tend to take teas and things that taste bad. They want things that taste yummy, like sugar and cereal. Also, the leaves, they have more of the cyanogenic compounds than the berries do. So they have similar medicinal properties, but if you have access to the berries or the flowers, I would use those. They also, the leaves also have a diaphoretic effect. They tend to make you sweat, which is one of the things that can make them useful if you need to sweat out a fever, to break that fever down. Let's make elderberry syrup. The first thing you will need is 1/2 cup of dried berries or 1 cup of fresh or frozen berries. Add 5 cloves. Everything is fine. Everything is under control. And toss in 1 cinnamon stick. 1 tablespoon of fresh ginger, or I usually just cheat and add powdered ginger, and I just guesstimate, so it's a little different every time. Then you will need 2 cups of water. Just a note, if you are using dried berries, they have obviously less moisture than fresh or frozen berries, so you might want to add like an extra 1/4 cup of water just to make up for that. Bring that to a boil, but then reduce the heat to a simmer. You can partially cover the lid and let it simmer until the fluid content has reduced by half. And my trick is I will take a wooden spoon and stick the back end straight down in the liquid. Then I will get a piece of tape and put it right at the top of that wet-dry line. So that way I don't forget how high the liquid was. And if you don't make a mark of some kind, you probably will forget. So use a piece of tape to mark it. After it has finished simmering, go ahead and strain out all the liquids. You can do it in a jelly straining bag or a cloth, whatever. Just squeeze out all the precious liquid. Then add in 1 cup of honey or 1 cup of sugar if you're being cheap. Maybe you're making it for somebody else and you don't want to use your good stuff. It doesn't matter. And stir that in. And bottle it. Let it cool. It's good. That's your elderberry syrup. Keep it refrigerated though. It is not shelf stable. Generally, say I like to use maybe a tablespoon for an adult or a teaspoon for a child. maybe once a day. If it's just casual use, if it's flu season or people around you are sick, you may use it twice a day. Or if you are starting to get sick or you are sick, maybe just every hour. I don't usually limit elderberry syrup with my kids. I mean, I don't let them guzzle it, but I let them take it about as frequently as they want, as long as they're not just coming back for their sugar fix. We're going to make elderberry gummies. Ho ho! You need some coconut oil. You will need 1 cup of your elderberry syrup. Let it cool if you just freshly made it. You're going to need 2 tablespoons of gelatin powder and a ½ cup of hot but not boiling water or juice. First, grease a pan with your coconut oil and then put the rest of the coconut oil away because it's done. Take 1/4 cup of your elderberry syrup in a 2-cup measuring cup, and then whisk in the gelatin powder mix. Add your hot water or hot juice. I like to add little apple juice because usually I'm making this for my own kids, and kids like things to be a little extra sweet, don't they? So add in your hot juice, but not boiling. Stir that with a fork, and it will smooth out pretty quick. Then you want to add the rest of your elderberry syrup and stir that up with a fork until it gets smooth. Pour that into your pan, or if you want to be fancy and use little molds or something, or you could grease up a ice cube tray. But honestly, it's hard to get the cubes out of there. I've tried doing this in little gummy bear molds. It never comes out right. If you add more gelatin powder, I'm sure it would come out right, but the gelatin adds a little bit of flavor, even if it's unflavored. Now I'm rambling. Let's get back to making gelatin. So you pour it in the thing, let it refrigerate about 2 hours, maybe not even that much. Then pull it out, flop it out of your pan, and cut it into the desired sizes/doses. Those little white spots on the bottom of the jelly, don't worry, that's just cooled coconut oil. It's not funky fungus spots. These are best if consumed within 1 week. They would last a bit longer, but the fresher the better. I hardly ever have them last a week because I have a bunch of kids. Also, I like to eat them, and so they go away. You can make a double batch if they go away too fast. And that is elderberries from start to finish. Enjoy, have fun, go out and find some elderberries, bring some into your neighborhood, gather them, freeze them, buy my shirts and foraging bags, join Patreon, throw money at me. What were you doing with the money anyway? You were going to use it on something irresponsible and selfish like paying for food for your children. I mean, come on. How selfish can you be? I need to buy stuff. I don't even know what I'm going to use the money on. I'm going to buy cool herb toys. Now, wouldn't you like to see cool herb toys? Wouldn't that make you feel happier than seeing your children fed and healthy? Of course it would. So, this is the worst ending ever. I'm just going to stop here. Thanks for watching. Bye.